Champ, Chapter 12. True Teamwork. Champ woke me on Saturday morning by sticking his nose in my ear. I tried to hide under my pillow, but he pulled it off and dragged it halfway across the room. It's Saturday, I groaned. I can sleep late today. Champ looked at me and wagged his tail. He didn't care if it was the second Tuesday of next week. He was up and ready to go. Saturday was chore day. I heard Mom running the vacuum in the den and Dad cleaning the bathroom. When I rolled out of bed, I stripped off the sheets. I stuffed dirty underwear and socks into my hamper. Champ followed me from room to room, acting like he was inspecting all my work. But when I headed down the steps for breakfast, Champ forgot all about me. He made his way straight to the back door and stood at attention. He pointed his nose at the doorknob, and he growled. I'd never heard him growl before, except for when we played tug-of-war with a piece of rope. He looked over his shoulder at me, then faced the door again and barked. What is it? I asked, as I piled my dirty dishes in the dishwasher and then swiped a towel over the countertops. Another growl vibrated deep in Champ's chest. What's wrong? I asked. I found out as soon as I opened the door and stepped out onto the porch. There, clustered with Mr. Douglas in his backyard, were Kaylee, Frank, and half the baseball team. They grinned when they saw me. About time, Kaylee said. We were about to get started without you. Trouble is, we need the dog, Frank added. Dog? I repeated. Only it was a question. You know, Frank said, that three-legged animal with the tail that keeps moving, goes bow wow. Kaylee's grin stretched clear across her face. We're going to help you get Champ through those weave poles. It was your idea, Frank said. You said it yourself. Champ will run circles around people, but he just doesn't get the idea of going in and out of these poles. Well, we're going to be the weave poles, human weave poles. Before I could make sense out of what they were saying, the team members formed a line in front of Champ, their bats planted on the grass by their sides. That's when it dawned on me. They were going to guide Champ in and out of the obstacles they formed with their baseball bats. I led Champ to the front of the line. He looked up at Frank and wagged his tail. I gave Champ his command. Weave. Champ looked at me as if I had kibble boogers coming out of my nose. Weave, I repeated. Frank slapped his hand on his thigh, and Champ's ears lifted a full inch. He step-hopped to Frank for an ear scratch. Frank gently guided him between his bat and Luke's, who then led him through the next two bats. In and out, the team guided Champ through the weave poles made from their bats. I ran the length of the human obstacle, praising Champ each time he made it between two people. Turning the tight corners was hard. Champ's balance was thrown by only having one front leg. He stumbled twice. Each time I reached out and had a hand to steady him. When Champ made it through the last bat, we all broke out in a cheer. Mr. Douglas yelled the loudest. Champ added a few barks to the noise. I whooped along with everyone, but my cheer stuck in my throat when I saw Dad. He leaned against our house, his arms crossed over his chest. I reached out to touch Champ's back and watched Dad push off from the house. Did you see that? Frank asked my dad. Champ's going to get the hang of this yet, Luke said. It was all Riley's idea, Kaylee added. He knew Champ would weave around our bats. A clever idea, Mr. Douglas said, as he joined the rest of us. Never would have thought of that myself. Dad nodded, just a quick dip of his head. Yeah, I saw it, he said. That's really something. What I'd call true teamwork. For some reason, the feeling in my stomach matched the tightness in his voice. The team's straight line had disintegrated, and a few of them were trying out Champ's obstacles. Frank was walking across the dog walk, and two other kids were hopping over the jump. They all had forgotten about my dad, but Dad hadn't forgotten about them. He was watching, and I knew something was bothering him. I could tell by the crease on his forehead. Later, after the team had scattered to their houses, and Mom had left for the grocery store, Champ and I went back to the house for lunch. Dad stood by the counter waiting for me. Watch the team leave, Dad told me. It made me mad knowing he had been spying. At least Mr. Douglas stood out in plain sight, but Dad hid in the house, peeking out windows. Aren't you practicing baseball today? Dad asked. Only it didn't sound like a question. It was more like an accusation. I shrugged. Pulled open the refrigerator. Time got away from us, I said. Champ is doing so much better. It doesn't seem to bother him that he has only 3 legs. He's doing great, don't you think? I wanted him to admit that Champ wasn't a total loser, that he was doing better than anyone had thought he could. And I wanted my dad to admit that I had done a good job training Champ. Dad reached out to scratch Champ's head. He's healed up fine, Dad said with a nod. I can tell he gets stronger every day. You've kept your end of the bargain about caring for him. Your mother and I both appreciate that. But I don't think you should distract the entire team with your doggy playground. They're not distracted, I said, trying to make my voice sound normal, instead of mad. They were just helping. How do you expect them to win the opening game if they're spending practice time playing with your dog? Dad asked. You need to focus on what's important, the team. You want to be ready for the opening game at the Founders Day picnic, don't you? I can help you get ready. You and me, practicing. We can turn you into a real asset to the team for the entire town to see. There it was. The real reason Dad was making such a big deal out of all this. He was afraid I'd embarrass him. Again. I had never decided to actually enter Champ in the contest. Up until that very second, I had only been using the obstacles to keep Champ busy so he wouldn't chew up furniture or herd rolls of toilet paper in the living room. But just then, something took root in my gut. Dad would probably call it stubbornness. Haley would call it dumb. I didn't have my own word for it, but I did know then and there I was entering Champ in the contest. Chapter 13. Newsflash. I knew Dad thought I was going to quit the baseball team. I wasn't going to give him the satisfaction. Every afternoon I went to practice and then hurried home to work with Champ. When I told Dr. Fayette why I was too busy to help at the office, he didn't mind a bit. He even wished Champ and me good luck. Every day more and more people came to Mr. Douglas's backyard to watch. Kids from the team, people from the neighborhood, Mom and her friends. I had to admit, it felt good when Mom clapped for Champ. I guess she was clapping for me too. If Dad got home early from work, he would watch for a while, but he didn't say anything. Every once in a while he'd ask how ball practice was going, or if I wanted him to give me a few pointers. I didn't tell him I was still swinging at air. Unlike me, Champ was getting much better with practice. His coat was sleek, his muscles were strong. He acted more and more confident as he made his way through the obstacles. His steps were bold, his ears were up. He rarely hesitated, except when he faced the teeter-totter and the weave poles. It's almost as if Champ is showing off, I mentioned to Mr. Douglas. Mr. Douglas nodded. Remember his former life? Mr. Douglas said. He's used to having an audience. I guess word got out, because one Wednesday afternoon a reporter for the Davenport Daily News showed up at Mr. Douglas's backyard. He'd heard about Champ from Kevin's mother, who worked with the reporter's wife. That's how things in a small town work. Somebody says something to someone who tells somebody else. Pretty soon the whole town knows. The reporter introduced himself as Billy Reynolds. He shook Mr. Douglas's hand, then stretched his hand toward me. I stared at him for 5 seconds before I realized he wanted to shake my hand too. I understand you're training Mrs. Lerner's dog at for the Founders' Day agility competition, Billy said. He's my dog now, I said firmly. I wanted to make sure he got that part right. Billy nodded. I heard her dog was hurt in an accident. Tried to interview her about it yesterday, but she closed the door in my face. Said she was too busy to be interviewed. Just like she was too busy to take care of a crippled dog. But it doesn't look like this dog needs nursing. Do you know how he lost his leg? Billy Reynolds had been talking a stream of words so long and smooth, I didn't realize where he was heading until he asked the question. It must have been a bad accident. Do you know about it? Billy urged when I stood there, my mouth opening and closing like a puppy's. It didn't seem possible that a news reporter didn't have a clue about what happened to Champ. Mr. Douglas cleared his throat. The dog got hurt in a car accident, he answered for me. There was too much damage to the bone and ligaments to save the leg. But Champ seems to handle only having 3 just fine. Riley here has been working with him every day. Champ is strong and healthy, thanks to him. Billy Reynolds scribbled in a little notebook and didn't notice when Mr. Douglas reached out and squeezed my shoulder. The pressure of his hand was steady and strong. I turned to smile at him. My mom had been right all along. There was nothing weird about our neighbor. He was nice. I was up and running the morning after the interview. I had a system by now. I threw on my clothes, washed my face, brushed my hair over my forehead. Then I galloped down the steps and took Champ for a quick walk down the street and back, making sure to scoop the you-know-what. After that, I threw his chewed-up knotted rope a couple of times for him to chase and filled his water and food bowls. Once he was set for the day, I grabbed a bowl of cereal for myself, then hightailed it upstairs to brush my teeth. It was timed to the nanosecond, so I wouldn't be late for school. That morning wasn't any different, until I raced back down to the kitchen. My sneakers squeaked to a stop on the linoleum when I saw Dad sitting at the table with the local paper spread out in front of him. Mom snipped a few blooms off the African violet perched on the kitchen windowsill. Dad stared at the door as if he'd been waiting for hours for me to make an appearance. As soon as he knew he had my attention, he cleared his throat. It wasn't a good sign, especially since he wore that all-too-familiar crease between his eyes. Dad pushed the paper across the table. The kitchen table is small, so it only slid 6 inches, but it was enough for me to see the article on the front page of Section 2, Billy Reynolds' article. Mom stepped over to glance at my shoulder. "It's a good picture," she said, and her smile showed me she meant it. I looked down at the paper. The picture of me with my arm around Champ's neck stared back at me. "Davenport boy and dog defy odds," the headline screamed. I let a small smile trickle the corners of my mouth. I liked the sound of it. It sounded daring and brave. Then I saw the line beneath the headline. Baseball team sacrifices to help. "I was afraid those obstacles would distract the team," Dad said. "I didn't ask them to help," I said. Anger crept into my voice and I felt the tips of my ears burn. "But you didn't tell them not to help," Dad pointed out. "I don't have time," I told him. I tried to sound polite, but I knew I wasn't very successful. Riley's right, Mom said. He has to get to school. This can wait till later. Dad looked at Mom, Mom looked at Dad. The silence felt heavy. I was going to be late, but I sat down anyway. It's what Dad expected, and I didn't want Mom and Dad to fight. Champ made his way under the kitchen table and rested his chin on my thigh. Mom sat down and reached across the table to put her hand on my arm. I think it's great Riley and Mr. Douglas have been working together, she told Dad. They've accomplished a lot. Dad nodded. But he needs to put things in perspective. There's a lot he can learn from being on a team, and there's a lot I can teach him about the game. He's made a commitment. He can't just back out when things get tough. Baseball isn't everything, Mom argued. He can do both. Dad didn't answer right away. He acted like he was chewing on Mom's words to see how they tasted. I almost fell out of my chair when he finally said, You're right. What Riley has accomplished with Champ is great, but I just want us all to face reality. There's no way Champ can win an agility contest, but Riley can be an asset to his baseball team. They were talking as if I wasn't even in the room, and I had had enough. Maybe I can hit a ball, I said, but here's a newsflash. I'll never be a great athlete like you were. I'm no good at baseball, just like I'm no good at soccer or basketball or anything else that you care about. My voice was getting louder and louder, and I couldn't seem to do anything about it. I can't throw, I can't hit, I can't run, I can't shoot baskets, so just give up on me. I'll never be good enough for you. Dad grabbed the rim of the table and blinked at every word as if I were hitting him in the face. Riley, don't say that, Mom said. That's not what this was about. I was done listening. When I pushed the chair away from the table, Champ stumbled back. He looked at me and whined. That's exactly what this is about, I told Mom. Dad wants me to be the sports superstar of Davenport, just like he was. Instead, Champ and I are nothing but a big embarrassment to him. That's not true, Dad said. Your father just wants to help, Mom added. He wants to spend time with you. Tell him, Joe. But I didn't wait for Dad to say anything. When I stormed out the door, Dad didn't bother following. It wasn't until I was halfway to school that I realized why he didn't try to stop me. There wasn't anything else for him to say. Except, of course, that he agreed 100% with what I'd said.